Audience. Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about proxemics and mental health and crisis communication, which is a crucial dealing with people who are in a mental crisis. So first, I'm going to start with sharing my screen. Share my screen. So as I said before, we're going to be talking about proxemics and mental health and crisis communication presented by who? None other than Mariah Hines. So firstly, what is proxemics? As you can see on the screen, I said proxemics is the study of space and communication, how distance affects meaning and emotions introduced by Edward Hall, used in everyday interactions. Proxemics is just the study of how space and distance influences communication. It was first introduced by Edward Hall, who explained that distance plays a big role in how we interact with others and how we interpret behavior. Even in everyday situations, we are constantly adjusting our personal space without realizing it. It's just a normal interaction, and people who are um surrounded and aware, we use this every day. So looking at the screen, what do you see? First, you see intimate surroundings, then you see your personal surroundings, then you see your social surroundings and your public surroundings. This picture is really important when it comes to proxemics because it shows you the safe distances around everyone and the people and how you should interact with them in certain circles. Okay, so we have four different distance zones. We have the intimate distance, which is very close, as you've seen in a previous slide. The personal distance, which is friends, familiar people. And you have social distance for like formal interactions, for like going to the club or even at a brunch or anything of the sort. Then you have public distances. And when do we use public distances? Is like, say, for instance, if we're at a mall or at a park, you want to keep that safe, you want to keep the safe distance. So as I stated, there are four main distances: intimate, personal, social, and public. Use these zones depending on who we are interacting for. Example, we stand closer to people who we trust and further away from strangers, like in different settings. These zones are very crucial when it comes to communication, comfort, and familiarity and boundaries. Why does space matter? Space matters anywhere, to be honest. Let's be honest. How many times have you been in a social in anywhere and someone's you don't know is too close to you? You might feel like, oh my gosh, this is uncomfortable. So it is important to always know when space matters. These show that distance is not just personal preference, it's just actually impacts behavior and outcomes. Next slide. Why is proxemics so important in mental health settings? Other than talking, I think proxemics is one of the most crucial parts of interacting with anybody in mental health crisis settings. Firstly, let's be honest, patients may feel overwhelmed or anxious if you're in the wrong personal space. Say, for example, a patient may not know you, they might be new to the facility, and I'm keep on saying patients because a lot of times I come across this in situations. You have to know proper space boundaries when working, but not even just working. But since I'm talking about mental health crisis, me working in a psych facility slash addiction facility, I feel like this is very important. You need to know important space boundaries. For example, if a patient has lost their mother or father and you're speaking to them across the room, how does that present to the patient? So you have to know what space zones that you need to be in to be more therapeutic for anybody in a mental health crisis situation. You have to know your spaces. Because if you're talking to me across the room and I just lost my father and I need comfort or anything, I'm gonna feel like it's not gonna be therapeutic for me. I'm probably gonna feel offended. But however, it is important to know when to use this in a mental health crisis. A lot of times people in a mental health crisis, they may become aggressive. They may become aggressive, and you need to know you need to you need to know you need to know when it is safe to be in their intimate space. It's very, very, very important. So if a patient is yelling at me, oh my gosh, hitting items and just doing all types of stuff around me, I'm gonna know that being in their personal space or and definitely not their intimate space is not appropriate. You have to know you have to know your space zone. So for example, what space do you think you should be in when a patient is going through a mental health crisis? Me personally, I think social would be like if they're aggressive, social would be the most appropriate space for me. However, if they're going through something that you need to support them in, like losing a family member or talking about how they lost their children, I feel like a personal space zone would be the most therapeutic. As we just said before, why space matters. Too close equals uncomfortable and aggressive. Too far, as I mentioned before, may seem distant or uncaring. Space sends nonverbal messages. For example, well, I'm not going to go there because I already went through that, but it definitely is important. Far from your words, your space is the most one of the most important things that you need to realize, and it affects how people feel and respond. And I always use mental health crisis when people going through something as I stated before as one of the most important things that you need to know. Space is important. Close or too close. So calm equals closer, and that's support, as I mentioned before. Agitated equals distance, which equals safety. However, though that proxemics is important in mental health crisis, you have to know that a lot of cultures greet each other differently. So a lot of cultures, like Middle Eastern, they might greet each other with hugging and kissing, while we Americans, we don't greet like that. We might give a handshake or anything, but a lot of people miss the point that different cultures may not understand proxemics, but you always have to respect people's cultures. So just be mindful dealing with people with different cultures. They might not understand proxemics. So in mental health, I would deal with someone from the Middle Eastern probably way more in a way more intimate setting rather than I would deal with an American. Just like you respect any other culture, Muslims or Jewish or anything like that, you have to respect cultures, even when it comes to proxemics. Why it matters, like I said, it builds trust, prevents conflict, and improves safety. Always safety first when it comes to yourself. Anybody else, safety is one of the most important things. In our conclusion, proxemic shapes communication and is very important for mental health. Me wanting to be a psych provider or a psych nurse practitioner, I felt like me understanding proxemics that was introduced by Edward Hall was a very important thing for me to do because I need to know when dealing with different clients and stuff how I might want to interact with them culture wise or even just regular Americans or somebody who's going through a hard time. You all have to understand proxemics. That's going to be really crucial for your personal life, your work life, or any social life that you have. Proxemics is important. You don't want anybody to feel uncomfortable. You don't want anybody to feel like you do not care. So we have to emphasize Proxemics. So I use Rufferson's Hall, E.T., Hidden Dimension, 1966, and these are all the references I use that made me understand proxemics better and made me understand when it's safe to use and when it's not safe. And I hope you guys enjoy my presentation. Hopefully after this presentation, you will understand why proxemics is so important in mental health crisis or even just in your regular life. It's important to um it's important to know your personal space, social space, and public space. Thank you guys. You have a wonderful day. Proxemics is key. And have a wonderful day. Stop.